So yeah, I mean, the question is, I'm trying to think of what inspired it from last week's conversation, and I think it was,
Fortuna.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
for, yeah,
we
it's
for
for
that.
Fortuna. Yeah,
So yeah,
Fortuna
that's why she can
wearing the
become your
mask.
goal. How about that?
I guess what was making me think of the question was about the whole face mask situation. I guess that we're going on social distancing, and especially a lot of people my age aren't really following the rules. They don't really think it's going to affect them, but I think to a certain extent they do understand that it can affect other people and they can pass on, coronavirus disease. So I was wondering what you guys thought about social responsibility in that sense. I guess, is it inevitable? Are we all going to get it one day eventually? Is it futile to try to prevent it, or
It's going to become like one of those things. I've heard that it might even become a recurring thing. Like it won't disappear forever. It'll become like another, like HIV or something like that, where it still exists in the world and the cases are just going to dramatically drop or whatever. But as far as social, it's going to just become another one of the norms. Although, like now, I think this is the most non-normal we have all been, at least in my lifetime, the non-normal behavior. Because like now, people everywhere is wearing masks. Like my friend works at Walmart and he's in the checkout line. This guy went off on the lady behind him, like straight up yelling at her, like, I'm tired of crazy people standing less than 6 feet apart. You need to stand back, lady. Like yelling at her, completely like, yeah, obliterated her. And she's like on the phone. She's like, sorry. But it's like, go ahead.
I was just responding. That was a public display. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think tension. I don't know. It's hard for me to go after the COVID responsibility. I can't go any further than that. But I do want to talk about responsibility, like social responsibility. And then if a regular citizen, do they have as much responsibility as someone who is not a regular citizen? Or do we all have the same responsibilities to each other? What I mean by that is people have positions of power or no, just power really. Influence is power too. It all boils down to power. So does Jeff Bezos owe the world more than we do? Do the president of the United States owe the world more than we do? Does someone who's disabled owe the world less than we do? Is there a standard across the board that we all owe the world, or are we staggered? Like right now, Jeff Bezos has the potential to donate, billions of dollars. I don't have that potential. So he has a potential to be responsible in a sense and give back, but he doesn't or whatever, or I don't know. But should he be responsible to? Should he be required to? Or if you were in that position, would you?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I mean, I think it really depends on how you want to come at it. I mean, if we're speaking in terms of, are we naturally inclined to help out others? I guess it's simply just no. But I mean, in terms of if you live in a society where you benefit from the society that you interact with, if you have loved ones and if you have empathy, I think that in and of itself is a strong argument to say, you know what, I should give back. Because the society that I grew up in and all the things in my morals that I kind of obtained from, I benefited a lot, so I should give back, or ought to give back.
Think about it this way. As a human, do we owe or do we have a duty, a strict duty to treat other humans in a certain way? As a fellow human, should we have a duty or a sense of duty, or is there a duty that one should treat another human a certain way?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think there's anything, I mean, I guess it really depends on what you might believe, but in terms of just a overbearing law, there is none, you're kind of free to do what you want, but it's really.
Yeah, so even if we are free to do not that though, I feel there is an inclination to do so. Because whenever you are born, you are a duty to your parents. Your parents have taken on a duty to raise you and bring you up or whatever, okay? They technically don't owe you anything. I mean, technically by that rule, then all babies can be thrown off balconies.
Well, what I'm saying here is that it's not necessarily like there's nothing that's going to control them to do it.
Because I'm not saying it has to be, it's never a control thing. It's never like a human has to do this, but it's a sense of, is it the right thing to do, I guess is the point that I'm getting at.
Is it a right thing to do? Yeah. And it's a sense of like, I mean, you could even base it in empathy to say, well, like, I understand what it's like to feel maybe like I'm down. Maybe I was a person who I didn't grow up with the richest of parents, and now I'm a little bit more wealthy. So maybe I understand what it's like to be in a certain position. So then I feel inclined to. So I think it's dependent once again on the person's perspective. And we're gonna go ahead and let Fortuna go.
So I guess I like your comparison with Jeff Bezos, but I think we have to remember is that it's kind of all relative. Like Jeff Bezos has, incomprehensible amounts of money compared to the rest of us. So, of course he should donate money, and so should we, relative to how much we have to donate. For example, Jeff Bezos donating, $1,000 wouldn't even make a small dent, in his bank account and in his assets. But me donating $1,000 would probably clear out my bank account. But also, yeah, we do have a responsibility, I guess, to help others just under, I guess, like this kind of social contract idea and this idea of like the veil of ignorance of that, you don't know where your standing would be in life. So you should do what you can to help others, whatever, powerful being you believe in, or if you don't believe in any being. I think we can all agree is that we don't know where we would have been in life before we were born. So I guess we'd want it to be as equal as possible amongst everybody. And yeah, for sure. And also, donating to charities is going to return back to you one way or another, whether it's in cosmic karma or whether you don't like the sight of homeless people, in front of your house. It's going to help you regardless one way or another. I don't think that you can have a selfless act and it not come back to you one way or another. Or for example, wearing masks, it's going to prevent you from getting the illness as well if everybody's wearing a mask. So it's all about this kind of like collective responsibility, I think,
My question is something. I'm sorry. So in the case that you do give back because you feel like if you do so, you're gonna get something in return. Like how charitable? How really are you really doing it because it's gonna make other people's life better, or you're doing it because you expect that the universe is gonna?
I don't think it matters. I get what you're trying to say. Honestly, I don't think it matters because if I was a homeless person or if I was in need of money or food, if I got what I needed, I don't think I would care what the intentions are.
Okay, so that's a big. You just said a big thing for. So if you don't believe intentions are everything, then. So if someone does something horribly wrong to themselves, get a personal gain, but they did it for themselves. Was it worth it, or? I mean,
I guess when I say intentions, I'm not speaking, generally. My moral philosophy isn't intentions don't matter, but in terms of being in the place of somebody who is underprivileged, right? Because that's kind of what we're talking about, our social responsibilities to underprivileged people or people at risk of, diseases. If I was a person in that position, and I have been before, I wouldn't care where it's coming from. I wouldn't care what the intentions are. I would care that it's there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you need it and you need it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I need it now. And I don't care who gave it to me, and I don't care why they gave it to me. I don't care if it was for them or if they just did it out of the kindness of their heart. And in that aspect, I don't think it matters in that sense.
look at it this way.
But I have a question for that though. So like, how do you draw the line as to like what is something that's considered socially responsible? Because what if you say, okay,
that was my question.
Yeah, like what if you give back to the homeless, right? And well, someone else could argue and say, well, maybe that enables them to not necessarily work for themselves. So then how would you measure that? What would you say and say, well, in turn, this is actually going to help them, while this might actually enable them to do nothing?
Imagine it from this perspective. Like if Jeff Bezos, if he has this opportunity, okay, he always has this opportunity every day or whatever. But one day he wakes up and goes, you know what, I've been wrong my whole life. I shouldn't have been taking from what I could from others below me and then giving it to myself in an attempt to achieve the ultimate. I was wrong in doing that, and I think I should stop doing that. And I'm gonna start by giving it all away. Now, what if that'd be a really good morning, okay? But imagine another scenario. He wakes up and looks at the news and sees his name trending on Twitter like Jeff Bezos hand over money now. Like we need money now. And he gets pressured into it, and then he has no change of heart. It is simply because of circumstances, and it will benefit him from a PR perspective, but there's no change within him. And so it is just an act out there, but there's no change in the person doing it.
I think that's just then a conflict of internal versus external. You could see that as a positive for the people who are gaining from that, but then internally for him, that's something that he would have to solve for himself.
My point there was the intention of him doing it all. He did
Yeah,
it
exactly.
on one hand because he wanted to do it, and on the other, he did it because he knows it's going to benefit him.
Yeah, but the intention is essentially something that's going to be directly with the self, while everything that he does externally and the actions that he basically does is going to affect the people, you know. And so I guess
But the only way to fix
to the people who are benefiting from it, it doesn't really matter to them. Essentially, the internal is completely with the self. That's what I'm trying to say.
But we want an infinite expression of this. We don't want it to be a singular effect, because it.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, Marcus. Like, what if there's a person out there who maybe they're essentially not necessarily a good person. What if they really want to change, but even in wanting to change, in a sense, they're kind of incapable. You know, how do you start to change as a person? When you're doing something, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to do good because I want to be a good person. And so in that sense, you're kind of doing it for a selfish reason. But at that point, where do you even begin? You have to start somewhere. You have to start in that point and say, okay, I'm going to do something and I'm not going to do it for myself. You know, he might not believe it at that point, but the action in and of itself is the beginning.
I see what you're saying.
So definitely, like there is intention matters a lot, without a doubt. But we have to, I think there's a bigger question here. Is like, well, how do you act responsibly for people who need help? How do you help someone? Should you
Yeah,
just
I feel-
give them something, or should you help educate them? Can you really help someone? Because what if they're incapable of change within themselves? How do you help that?
Well, that would be a person who is not turned within themselves, and they are, if I may borrow from the Republic, they're still dancing and staring at shadows. They're staring at dancing shadows, believing it to be the absolute truth of said thing, when in reality they're in a cave and they are not open. Their eyes are not opened to the reality of the shadows not being full formed, and they. If these people were born in there and believed this their entire life, one cannot just pull them out of the cave and show them the light outside and say, this is true, they will go blind. But when a person themselves take it upon themselves to turn around, and it is only within themselves that they can discover that. You have to turn inward to change. And someone who's not turned inward won't change because they don't have a sense of, you could say, self-awareness. Because a turning inward is like a self-awareness in a sense, because you become obsessed with what you do and what you are and what your being is. And so then you understand that you have complete control over it. And so then you go about changing it. If that made any sense, I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but then I kind of have the question here: can you really come at it as a communitarian perspective without having like a perspective of utility? Because when you're looking at things that you're going to be doing in terms of responsibility, aren't you always looking at the consequences of your actions?
Or the benefits, because what if there's no consequence to not doing something, but it benefits you from not doing something? The only consequence is that you don't get to experience that thing that you've withheld from yourself.
I get what you're saying.
I think Orlando's definitely right. If we're looking at this through a scope of, sorry, I have my retainer on, but if we're looking at this through a scope of social responsibility, we definitely have to look at the consequences of an action and not really the intentions. Just purely because, like, I don't know, I just feel like social responsibility is about, I guess, the outcome of our actions and how we treat others in our society. It's solely about the outcome. So, and Orlando, to answer your previous question, I think that it's about the bright line. The question you had about the bright line between social responsibility, like where does it end and where does it begin? And I definitely think that has to do a lot with social contract theory, which we definitely have in the United States specifically, in terms of having obligations to society like voting or paying your taxes, and in return, you get those benefits.
Okay.
I just don't see that as an ultimate solution, because if it is just purely about the outcome, it is never about the becoming of that thing. It is just it happening to you, around you, to everyone else, but it is never, you've never become that thing what we hope to be from that action. You see what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
just purely, we receive pleasure from the act of it happening, but there's no sense of becoming that.
I think it's a mixture of the two. I mean, I think, like I said earlier, I mean, the intention is with the self. You know, if you're looking to better yourself as a person, I guess you could say you should always consider, or maybe you should consider intention. But for others, like I kind of said before, it doesn't really necessarily matter about the intention, but rather the action.
My
Because
point is, I don't know how we can convince society to do that act without them understanding that it's for the better of themselves and not just everyone else. You see what I'm saying? Because the only way to get them to do that continually would be to convince them that doing such thing betters themselves more than it betters others,
force them
even
to
if it
believe
is
that
them
way.
giving up something.
You can't
Say
force
what?
someone to believe it. They essentially have to.
No, but it's about convincing them. So if you go about the way of saying it's just an act, just do it and everyone will feel better about it, but it doesn't really help you. That would be the perspective of intentions don't matter. But if we convince them otherwise that it is good for themselves to do such a thing and be that way, then they have love in it and they want to do it. It is not just about the act, and it is a continual expression.
I think the outcome.
I think I'm getting it.
I think the outcome could be the convincing factor. I mean, I think if a person does something good for someone else and they see the joy that it brings that person, that in and of itself could convince them and be like, you know what, it was worthwhile. You know what I did mean something. I don't think you can ever really convince someone into believing that what they should do is the right thing. I think it's something that they have to come upon themselves to truly believe it.
Yeah, no, it's not like, what I mean is like, of course it lies within themselves, but I'm saying the better argument here for them to reach that point would be to convince them of the fact that intentions do matter, and that when your intentions matter, good intentions are the best. And then
I agree. I agree with
they will
that.
see that, and they will give according to good intention. I don't know. I don't know. It's
No,
a very
I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think necessarily that it always has to be that way, because once, like I said before, like a beginning of a good action might not necessarily start in the right place. But if a person comes to believe that it is the right thing eventually because of what they first did, then
But sorry that I interrupted, but
Sorry.
the way I'm trying to see it, and just to kind of like give it a little bit of form in my head, is that I understand what you're saying, and I do believe that in a sense it's true. But what if the person is doing the action not as an obligation to society, but just as an obligation to himself?
That's even
Because
better.
you know
That would be the product of convincing them that intentions do matter, because they don't do it for everyone else, but they do it rather for themselves because they love to do it and they want to.
So in that case, like, do we really consider that as an obligation to society? Because if the person is just acting in his own accord, then it's an obligation to himself to
Yes, I like
enrich
this. I like
himself
this
as much as
perspective.
he can,
is that the
and
or is
use
that the
that
point,
to benefit. Huh?
or is that the point where like they sort of mix together, where which benefits you benefits others, and that in and of itself is a good thing?
Do you have an obligation to yourself to make yourself a better human? Think about it that way.
Is that not still acting in self-interest if someone comes up to you and says, hey, acting with good intentions, it's going to make you feel good, it's going to make you feel better? I think that's still acting in self-interest. I think the solution really, if anything, would be to convince them that it would be better for them in general.
It's not that doing good things make you feel
For
good,
example,
but
let's
it's
see
that
that we
doing good things make you a good person, and being a good person is a good thing. And so
But
they,
that's not
as a
something you can
human,
really
want to be a
convince
good
someone of.
person. What?
That's not really something you can convince someone of. I think either a person wants to be a good person or they don't. Is that really something that you can change in someone?
I believe this argument has the potential to. That's the point.
Well, the way I see it
If we
is
don't think
like,
we can convince anyone of it, what are we talking for?
like, for example, like for the way I see it is like, maybe you are like a food distributor, and you're about to get some food that is gonna get damaged. It's almost damaged, and you go and knowingly know that it's gonna get damaged. You throw it to different people who has not much access to the resources, and some of them get sick and all, but you did it out of good intention, supposedly, just to not have to deal with all those, and like trashing and all that stuff. So I do believe, like, like Marcus says, this discussion has a good possibility to talk about how much really person do things for themselves and how really do they do it for society.
What if,
Give me
what
one
if
second.
an obligation to oneself and an obligation to one's society is almost one and the same, but we just don't know it? Because I think we're almost looking at it from like each end, but not realizing that thing we're looking at from each end is the same thing, but we're just seeing at it from different ends.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of Ferdinando was kind of trying to get
Yeah.
at earlier, is just this idea of where they start to overlap.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Because
But-
almost it is in your interest for others to be, see, it's the cycle. It's a cycle. It's if I do something, if everyone did, if everyone lived for everyone else rather than themselves, everyone would be living. But it's because people live sometimes for themselves rather than others and do such things accordingly that they take more than they give, etc. Or, they, you know what I mean.
I think
Yeah, I know.
you're a person who's always considering, the internal and the external, self and others. It's always a good thing, because you're essentially kind of conveying understanding. But if you're a person who's always acting in only your self-interest, who's like you're only thinking about how it's going to affect you, I think that's where you start to come with the issues there. Because I think Fernando, you were asking this earlier, can a good deed be solely a selfish act, and is that necessarily a good thing?
I'm taking the stance that there's no such thing as a truly selfless act unless it's on accident. And that's something that we kind of talked about in Manzi's class, this idea that this dude named Warnock, who talks about basically everything we're going to do is going to benefit us in one way or another. So it doesn't really matter. I guess, I mean, not that it doesn't matter, but that it's basically, I think it's impossible to have a truly selfless act, because even if you're donating to charity because you want to, and you believe that that's going to make you a better person, that inherently is a selfish act. You're doing it for yourself.
I think it's cool that you brought up Warnock, because I really like his object of morality, where he's saying essentially like morality's purpose is to kind of counteract our selfish nature, is for the fact that things are liable to go bad with others.
And I don't even think it's necessarily to counteract our selfish nature, but to mediate it, I guess, in a sense, to, in spite of our selfish nature, to still thrive as a society, and use that for our advantage. And we get people to understand, hey, if you pay taxes, you're going to get better roads. If you pay taxes, your kids are going to go to a great, high school. They're going to get great education. In one way or another, we have to convince people that it's going to benefit them. And I don't think that there's a distinction between, and I don't know if this is what you guys were trying to say, I don't think there's a distinction between saying, oh, hey, it's going to benefit you and it's going to make you a better person versus, oh, it's going to benefit you in a more fiscal way or in a more tangible way.
Yeah, I think the only problem with that is that, like, when you start to say, well, this will benefit you, I feel like you walk a very thin line, because in some ways, some of our tax money doesn't necessarily benefit us. It might even benefit people who we wouldn't like it to benefit. And so in that instance, I think maybe an easier way to
But
look at
some of it benefits us.
without a doubt.
Think about it from this perspective. Imagine a highway lane, okay, a 5-lane highway. If people entering this highway and then driving on this highway drove only for themselves, okay, and if they weren't driving accordingly, that everyone is just like themselves and they all have to get to a place too. That person who's driving just for themselves is the person that causes the traffic by rushing up to the next car, waiting, and then the next car rushes up to them, and then it starts stacking, or they cut someone off, and then they move on, and then there's congestion in traffic now because they were driving for themselves, not for everyone else. If that makes sense.
Right, but to go off the driving analogy, we still have speed limits, and even though people do sometimes break those limits because they feel a sense of self-importance, generally speaking, as a society, we adhere to those road laws, and we're better for it. I don't think we're completely selfish in the way that or not that we're selfish, but I don't think we're completely inconsiderate in the way that we drive, because to a certain extent, a lot of us still adhere to those laws, and it makes us all safer for it. So I think it's this idea of collective action making, everything better.
Everyone on the highway has the collective action of following the set guidelines before us that make you a better driver, etc., and knowingly do it in addition to knowing that everyone around them is in the same situation. And this guy coming up on your left who's kind of going fast, you kind of want to get in front of him because that's kind of where your lane wants to be, but no, I shouldn't cut him off, because he's just like me, and I'd be pissed if someone cut me off.
Yeah, and then you have those people, I'm sure we all know someone like this who, in spite of knowing all this, does not care and decides to, speed and cut people off and be disrespectful on the road. So I think that's kind of what I was getting at. You can't force someone to care. Either they do or they don't. And a majority of us do,
Well,
but some of us don't.
Can I just throw something in there?
yes.
I think we try to force people to care in the following sense. I think that's kind of what the laws are. So we're talking about trying to look. I think Marcus, you said look inward and sort of affect the transformation that way. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's a little
Yes.
choppy, but yeah, you're good.
All right. Well, yeah. I guess I just wanted to say this. I think something like the laws of the road, like speeding, for example. When you want in your heart to speed and drive recklessly for whatever reason, you're in a hurry or whatever, and but you understand that there might be some bad consequences. It could be you put other people in danger, you might have a car accident, or you just get a ticket. Knowing that forces you to keep your impulses at bay. It teaches you how to control your impulses. And it's not anything you would ever do unless the laws forced you to do that. Now, not everybody successfully does control their impulses, but the very fact that you have to deal with that on some level is sort of forcing us to maybe become a bit more concerned with other people in a way that, again, kind of begins with a sort of concern for yourself.
Well said. I agree.
And I think for some people who might even be kind of they're ignorant to that, I think they need to see like the consequence of their action for them to even understand that too. And, that it's sad that it's like that sometimes, but it is. Like if someone says, I don't need to listen to the traffic lights, and then they crash, guess what? They're probably going to pay attention to the traffic lights from now on.
So what if say exactly what you just, okay, yes. When someone doesn't do that, say exactly what you just said again, Orlando. I was trying to go,
Come on, man.
damn it, no, okay, I got it. Okay, imagine that thing where, you said that when someone doesn't do it, that they see the consequences of their actions. Yes, imagine Jeff Bezos not giving away anything, not doing anything for anyone else, but then at the end of his life, he sees the consequence of that being that he loves no one and no one loves him. What if that is the consequence, but it's the last consequence that we will ever see? And so this is why we can almost never convince anyone to do things selfishly, because that thing that you're supposed to get from it, you almost never see until the end.
You said that he loved everyone and nobody loved him.
No, I'm saying if he gets to the end and hasn't given away anything and doesn't do anything for anyone else, nothing selflessly and everything for himself, he's going to get to the end, and you could see the consequences of that being that no one loves him and he loves no one, or there's no one for him to love, because it was all for himself, and then everyone followed him. If they were following him, they were only following him for that fact. They weren't following him because they wanted to follow him, but they wanted to follow the things that were around him.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
It's like a rich person getting hot girls to follow them around. It's like you're a rich guy. Girls like to be around the stuff that a rich guy has. It's not like they like the guy. Like, sure, he might have a good personality and that might help, but like that is another line. I don't know. Do you think Jeff Bezos is going to regret anything?
I don't know Jeff
No,
Bezos personally.
I don't think so.
Fernando goes, now he got like 500 yachts. Like, now he good.
I don't think so.
What's he like marching on $1 trillion again? Like he's almost there. I've heard.
He
Almost.
got 150 billion right now, or something like that, almost.
He's almost to $1 trillion, that I've heard, after he had to
No.
go.
He's on the way to become the first trillionaire. He's not almost there. He's going to become the first trillionaire if things continue the way they are.
Wasn't he already a trillionaire or something?
No,
He-
this
No.
billionaire.
He's
He
not
has
a
150
and then
billion
his wife
dollars.
divorced him or something, and then he had to.
No, so he had 140 or 150 billion to his name, and then he had a $30 billion divorce, and he's already like recuperated all that. Essentially.
Like his whole thing about it is that what is it called? Because pretty much he thinks like he tries like to like put this like idea that like is caring or whatever, like females like they're attracted to that, because like that, because like he's pretty much trying to say, like females like to be chased, like they don't like to be chased, like they like a challenge, and that's what he's pretty much doing. He's trying to say like, oh, if you focus on your money, focus on yourself, women come, and that's not every single woman. Like I'm pretty sure everybody likes to be challenged in a relationship, but it just kind of depends, like person to person. Opposites attract, I believe. Like just like an introvert and an extrovert. Like if you're an introvert, you usually get befriended by an extrovert. So that's like pretty much how you make friends. Introverts really make friends. They just kind of get like dragged into it by extroverts. Say, you're my friend now. And you're like, oh, okay. Because, you want human interaction. Pretty much.
So does anyone want to be Jeff Bezos' friend is the question.
Say again?
Will he what?
I was wondering if anyone wants to be Jeff Bezos' friend.
Yes.
I'd say I would. And
Yeah,
I have a
Depends.
bit of a defense on Bezos' perspective because what he is he makes a shitload of money. We all know that, but that's on a basis of he's interacted and helped a lot of people. I mean, he's created thousands and thousands of jobs, created livelihoods for tons of people who not only sell on Amazon, but me as a consumer, I'm able to order products right now without ever going out to get and possibly getting sick. That alone as a contribution to society, I think. I mean, you got to weigh the balances of how much does he personally have to contribute when he's already personally and through his business contributed so much to millions of people.
Oh yeah, wouldn't that be the perfect example of what y'all were saying? Helps out myself and everybody else.
So, but imagine his intention in building Amazon, though. Was it to connect with everyone in the world and to bring jobs to millions, or was it to get that banging buck? You know what I'm saying? Like,
That just kind of happened.
Side effects.
but it might
Definitely
have
want
a
to
very
find a
good
way to make
outcome,
money.
and it might be then perceived as a good thing. Like we were saying, what a good thing done for non-intention things or whatever. Like, is it a good thing? Whatever, if it brings goodness, but it was done with a ill intent.
So like, wait, hold on, just 1 second, Marcus.
I mean,
Manzi, isn't that basically what Rollins believed? Like the idea that like inequality is okay as long as everybody benefits from it. Was that Rollins or was that?
That's a weird statement.
Well, yeah, who was that? Was that Rawls or was that somebody else?
I think I hear it before. It sounds familiar.
I forgot.
I think it is Rawls. No, you're right.
Horrible.
it Rawls?
Different than the Rawls that my students from last semester read, different pieces. But yeah, I mean, the idea is that you can justify anything so long as it's including inequality, especially if inequality or a hierarchical kind of societal structure, if that proves to be the most efficient way to govern a lot of people, and then yeah, you could justify that kind of inequality. And he means like specifically, again, financial inequality. Some people have, again, a capitalist society. Some people have more, some people have less, and that's okay if that helps the whole machine run better.
So do you think theories like that help Jeff Bezos sleep at night? Like, just make it easier for him. I think it makes it easier for him then to say inequality is good because it helps everyone, especially me.
I don't think it's anything he has to think about, really.
I think all capitalists believe that class structuring is necessary and a good thing because that's how you get more. But again, that's the capitalist perspective. The other thing to consider would be this, and look, I hate to play this role, but Marcos, you're playing the other side of it so well. I don't think Bezos owes anybody anything. Like, why? Just because he has a lot, that means he has to give it up? I'm not down with that. Like, I'm really not.
But then take all of that away. Does he still owe anything to anyone? If take away his everything around him, if he's just Bezos, just like a normal human like all of us, would he owe anyone anything?
No.
Himself?
No. Yeah.
Nobody owes anybody anything.
Well, yeah, just takes us back to the face mask.
Well, I guess I want to go into the idea of taxation because I think we all give people money to others. At the end of the day, we kind of have to if we work and submit our taxes and do our taxes. And I think when people talk about Jeff Bezos donating his money, no one's trying to force him to donate money, but we want him to donate money the same way that we're donating money in a sense or giving money to our state. Because relative to Jeff Bezos, if he was giving out the same money in taxes, the same amount that I was relative to my income, if he was having to give up the same amount of money relative to his, to how much he makes, the world would be a lot better place. You know, we would have a lot more funding and money for everything. And like, yeah, to a certain extent, I think we should have forced Jeff Bezos to kind of play the, to kind of go against humanity. We kind of should force him to do that because it's impossible. In my opinion, it's completely impossible and irrational for anyone to be able to earn $1 billion. You can't earn $1 billion. And that's a view I think a lot of people hold. And you definitely can't not own, but you definitely can't earn $1 trillion either when there's people that are dying and suffering on a daily basis, not only just in America, but in the world. And they're probably putting in more work than he is, if we're being completely honest, you know?
I feel like a lot
Yeah.
of people give money just due to the fact of publicity. Like, and it's sad to think about that, but I feel like, don't get me wrong, I believe there's a lot of celebrities that generally do care about the general public and people less fortunate than them. But I do truly believe, like, most people do it for publicity reasons. Like Nicki Minaj, I don't believe she does it for publicity reasons due to the fact because pretty much what she does, she pays a certain amount of people's college tuition and everything, like pays for their college, like pretty much gives them a full ride. I think that's pretty, that's nice. Because, like, how many people are going to do that? But and the thing is, I'd be like, oh, she's just doing for publicity. She just does it once, 2 times, but she's done it over 1,000, maybe even millions of times. I feel like that's the type of contribution that, it would be nice for people to, like, people of higher, like, living to give back. But it's also, the thing is, you can't expect that from them. Because at the end of the day, they made their money. And you can think, oh, they're not, like, self-made due to the fact that, obviously, like, we built their wealth. Like, without, like, a consumer, without us watching, they wouldn't have money. But the thing is, at the end of the day, they don't owe us anything. That's their money.
Yes.
But
Very well
Janae,
said. This made me
speaking
think
as
of
like
something.
speaking as an African American, there's like structural inequality that made it easier for him to get his wealth compared to other people,
Imagine it like this.
Yeah.
Amazon paid 0 in taxes. So are we saying then that even though we owe the government something, that man owes them nothing? We are obligated to the government. Technically, we are all obligated to the government, but apparently we have found no obligation to each other. But we love to be obligated to the government, to give taxes, etc. But when a man reaches a certain level of power, then I guess it becomes irrelevant.
Well, again, this is why there are mechanisms in place that allow people to actually be rewarded financially for being also charitable financially. So, I mean, this is why if you're a philanthropist and you raise, I don't know, $1 million for cancer research, you don't get taxed. You get a huge tax write-off. And the reason why you get the write-off is because of how charitable you're being. I mean, those mechanisms are in place precisely because it seems like nobody would
So
be
it's an
generous
incentive.
just for generosity's sake.
But you
It
got to
doesn't
think
make any
about
sense in this economy to do that.
I think also in the environment that we live in, it's kind of difficult to force people to do that because, I mean, even if we say, okay, well, now we're going to force you guys to pay taxes, there's so many different kinds of tax loopholes that people can go overseas and then make all kinds of, pay 0 taxes. And so that's the point is like, getting at is that you kind of have to give some incentive for them to pay taxes. But I think with money brings power and they control politics and,
And capitalism, that's why.
I don't think it's necessarily capitalism. I think it's corruption within people.
Capitalism creates corruption.
Capitalism is a system, and it's the people who make it corrupt.
No. The people running. Okay, look. You live in a capitalistic society. You then become somewhat richer, and then you convince everyone else you can become rich too by working for me and working your ass off. Chase that dollar, son. Do it for anything. Chase the dollar no matter what.
That's a pyramid scheme.
Exactly. America is the ultimate pyramid scheme.
You could say any system is corrupt at that point because you could say socialism is like, oh, let me rule you, I'm the one. Okay. So it's like the point is it's not necessarily it's the system that's corrupt, it's the people who make it corrupt.
No, what I mean is capitalism creates citizens who will do anything and sacrifice. They will sacrifice some sort of integrity to go after that dollar, just like Jeff Bezos did. We just said that it's impossible for him to honestly earn $1 billion. So the man had to cut some corners there, cheat the system somehow, take more from the workers under him or whatever to get to that level. That's what capitalism created that man.
Well, I just keep in mind, for capitalism to continue to flourish, there needs to be consumers, which means you got to take care of your society.
But you also got to think about the main thing that like pretty much brings on because it's like it's like the 7 deadly sins, man. It's gluttony, and just like it doesn't got to be just like it's obviously not just food. It can be like a hunger for more power, more money. It's just it's like it's
or lusting
like
after power and money.
Yeah, it's like its own like it's just human like kind of like thinking. It's just like people are easily influenced. not everybody's weak-minded, but the thing is just to the fact that if somebody walks up to you and say, hey, you can earn $1 billion if you just do this, you'd be dumb not to take it. Now and like no matter how much integrity, how much morals you have, $1 billion, if you have like a family of 10, of kids and a wife, you're gonna be like, wow, I could, and you're like living in like Singapore and not having a lot of money. You're gonna be like, wow, I could really take care of my family. So technically you're like thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about everybody else in the world that could be dying, whatever. You're just thinking about your own self-preservation.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the nature of the system. I think that's the nature of people, possibly.
That's just human. That's just how humans are. And it's like I feel like we all low key kind of fall like victim to it. I don't feel like anybody's just kind of like, oh, just righteous and pure. Everybody, like even The Rock, man, like The Rock's one of like the most nicest person, But even he like admitted, he's like, yeah, I used to know. Still, like nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody's there because everybody wants to pretty much just have a good life. Just have like find their own meaning. Everybody
Imagine
just
like this. We talk about sacrificing integrities and morals for the sake of the dollar. If $1 billion was on the line, is it ethical to do anything for it, or is it because of what you can do with the money, or is it ethical or is there no ethics involved at all? Like what? Like, are you allowed? Like, imagine if someone put a person about to die, an elderly woman, say she got 5 years left to live, but you got to kill her to get the $1 billion. Are you willing to sacrifice your ethical dilemma there to earn the $1 billion and then do seemingly a lot of good with that $1 billion? You could say, "Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that," but you killed someone.
Right. Well, here, I like that example, but let's try to expand the scope of it, to a more societal sort of level. So rather than that, do you let one person die? It's more like it'd be something like, do you give the banks a bunch of tax breaks, knowing that it's going to, cause a lot of people to have to declare their own bankruptcy on loans and stuff like that? But you do it because the banks are necessary for the very structure of the society of your nation, and also you're going to get paid handsomely for giving them tax breaks. So it's like it's all of these things mixed together. It's never. I think this was also the point being made by somebody who's new. Welcome, by the way. Is that it's never clearly one way or the other. Like there's always these competing interests, and even your self-interests can be competing. You want money, but you also want integrity. So it's really tough to consider social obligation as anything other than, I guess, an expansion of your sympathies that may or may not even be there, depending on perhaps, I guess, your personal upbringing or something.
Well said.
Just say that after I say everything, you'll be my favorite. Do we want to talk about masks? I don't feel like we quite.
About masks?
Hey guys.
Yeah, like if we have a
the
social obligation to wear
social
one.
distancing.
Hey
Yeah.
guys, at 4:25, I have to go because I have to go back to work. But if you guys can decide the topic, then I'll let you guys in the call. I don't really care. I don't know if it'll kick you out, but probably not.
Let me think of. All right, what do we want for topics of next week? We could talk about capitalism. No, I'm just kidding. No, we don't have to.
We could talk about capitalism.
You want to talk about capitalism?
I suggested last week politics and corruption, because then we could cover capitalism, socialism. We could cover anything.
Let's talk about the
Yeah,
root of
let's
corruption,
talk
maybe.
about that. Yeah,
Politics and corruption.
I
Yeah.
have so much examples.
I like this idea. I like this one.
Don't talk about corruption. I have a lot about that.
Yeah,
America's full of
Being
it.
in the military, I could tell you a lot.
it'll be a good
Bro,
time.
bro, don't get me started on the military, bro.
This
Oh my
guy.
God.
CIA doing unethical experiments in the 60s, 70s on unwitting citizens, literally injecting them with HIV and giving citizens unwitting citizens, not knowingly, citizens are receiving acid and LSD in CIA experiments.
Yeah, MK Ultra, where they were trying to brainwash people using psychedelics, supposedly.
Yes,
CIA owns Netflix. You've been read.
yeah,
Pill.
exactly. Yeah, there's a great
I'm joking.
All right.
What's it called?
Well, okay. Politics and corruption next week.
I'm down for it. Power corruption, politics and corruption, capitalism and corruption. Let's do it.
So
Got it.
Sounds
once
good.
I leave the chat, it's gonna stop the recording. So whatever you guys talk about, you can start cussing all you want. How about that?
All right, do it.
Yeah.
If we get kicked out, it was a great meeting, y'all.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed
I
this.
can end
We'll
it
see you
without
next
kicking you guys.
Very well.
But all right, I'll say goodbye. All right, guys, thank you for coming. It's not over yet. I don't know why everybody's leaving. You guys can still.
I think
I'm
it
still
might
here.
kick us out when we leave. I think it's going to close it.
I think Manzi wants to leave. I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah, I think he doesn't want to see our faces right now.
He's like, I think it's going to.
He's like, oh
I
man,
think I'm gonna make it
kicked me out. I don't know what happened.
Wait. Okay, you know what? I'll just end. I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna end it for everybody. All
I
right.
think this was a good ending, though. I think we did
Hold
very
on,
well.
hold on.
This was-
I'm gonna kick some people out. Hold on. I'm ending it. I'm ending it for everybody. That's what I'm doing, guys.
Oh,
But
okay.
everyone slowly.
Hard. It's
Hold on,
gonna be
hold on.
tough.
Bye.
It's hard.
No, wait, Manzi, don't leave.
Irish goodbye. I'll see you later, y'all.
Wait,
See you
stop.
later.
Stop. Don't go. All right, guys. Okay. For Tuna and for Fernando, I wanted to ask you guys. So we're looking for some officers for next semester. Would you guys be interested?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested if I remain at Richland next semester. I'm not sure.
Awesome.
No, I will be in Richland for sure. So
Okay. Cool.
Right, very cool.
So you're gonna be. Yeah, let Manzi
well.
take it. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say Ryan Cruz reached out and asked if he could be an officer as well. Do you guys remember Ryan?
Yeah, I remember him. The guy with a lot
I'm
of
not sure if I remember Ryan.
Yeah, so he's somebody else that wants some consideration. But yeah, I'm thrilled to hear y'all are interested.
Yeah.
How will it work? Is it going to be a vote, or are you guys going to pick officers?
What do you think?
No, I mean, I don't know. Or, what do you think, Orlando?
All right, how about it's a vote between me and Manzi. How about that?
Okay, I like that.
So you guys say the role that we're gonna be having? That's what you're trying to say?
Yeah, basically.
Yes, sort of.
Honestly, I think either of you would be really good for president. So,
Wait, Orlando, are you not at Richland next year?
I'm still gonna be there, but I'm basically just gonna give up the role because
Okay.
I've already been for 2 semesters, so I'd rather let somebody else
Yeah.
do it.
Fernando, we can do every other meeting.
Yeah, sure. I mean-
Co-president.
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 Yeah, but I like you guys together at the meetings. I like the back and forths.
Oh yeah, I'm
but
still
I don't think she's saying like if we're gonna be one and then the other one is not gonna be there. I think that what she's saying is that we're both are gonna be there, but instead of like instead of saying who's gonna be president, you just kind of like we're both president. It's
Yeah.
just like something like that.
I'm still going to be trying to make the meetings, by the way. Technically, I just graduated from Richland, but I'm
Oh,
going to be.
congrats!
Yay, no graduation. I'm actually excited for no graduation.
good.
Really?
Yes, I don't want to sit down. Fuck no. But damn it, did you stop the recording, Orlando?
No, it's still recording.
No, actually no. You should have checked first.
That was Marcus Smith speaking.
That was Marcus. He's not excited about it.
But yeah,
So politics and corruption.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be
But-
good.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Well-
just in case that that's an option, I'm perfectly fine like being like co-president with Fortuna. I'm
Okay.
perfectly fine with
Yeah,
that.
that would be
Guys,
fun.
Co-president. If you guys are co-president, I'm gonna make myself vice president. Okay.
Hey, let's be co-vice, Orlando.
Vice president. Ah.
I like it.
Let's go ahead.
All right, bad.
All right.
And I'll be Caesar.
Yeah.
Manzi, if we ever go to the same college, you're like, I see you were both vice president of philosophy club. Like,
I'll back you up. Don't worry.
Yeah.
okay. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna head out.
See you
I'm gonna
later.
stay on here. I'll leave the meeting. Bye, guys.
All right, thank you
All right,
guys.
this was the highlight of my day.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye.
See you later.